And with that, we'll start. Well, good evening, everyone. Welcome to the Alliance for Just Money Coffeehouse. For those that don't know, the Alliance is a 501c3 nonprofit that's dedicated to promoting monetary reform, both in the United States and globally. If you haven't before, please visit our website at www.monetaryalliance.org and sign up for our newsletter, or you can also join the Alliance for a one-time fee of $20. You can also become a voting member with additional benefits for $25 per year. So please consider that when you leave the meeting. Today, we are discussing debunking modern monetary theory, which is a theory that I think we've all heard of. If you haven't, then I'm sure Jeff will be happy to inform you on what it's about tonight. About the speaker. Jeff Eder is the co-founder of Progressive Money Canada. Progressive Money Canada was born out of a desire to see our current monetary and banking system revised to benefit the majority of people rather than the few. He has always been curious about how things work and fascinated by the sciences. He is a retired elevator technician that relied on knowledge and logic to troubleshoot problems. Eventually, his curiosity turned to economics, where he discovered how and where money comes from. Without that basic knowledge, no one can ever hope to understand the macroeconomic environment. So this is where he finds himself exploring possibilities for the future. You can visit his website at www.progressivemoney.ca. And with that, we'll have a little bit of a different format today. We're going to try some new things. Jeff is going to talk for a few minutes. We'll do a few question and answers. Then he's going to come back and present some more detailed information from his website. Then after that, we're going to break out into some separate rooms to discuss what he's talked about, and then come back together for the last hour to discuss it and ask questions in general. And so with that, Jeff, the floor is yours.
Okay. All right. Hello, everybody. In July of last year, when I first published the Deficit Myth and Modern Monetary Theory Revised, the Canadian version, I was briefly connected to Twitter and Facebook to share this with MMT followers. And I admit that I was a little sloppy with the use of the word currency in my paper. And almost immediately, that was pointed out to me. So I quickly corrected the errors, which only made my argument stronger. And after that, Kelton she just ignored the reasoning behind the paper and didn't comment further. However, her supporters were very quick to jump on me. And the response was somewhat predictable, but what really surprised me was there was not a single attack on the logic of my arguments. And to this day, there still is none. Rather, they're all like personal attacks, like, how dare you challenge the wisdom of the MMT gods, that sort of thing. And a lot of it was just, it was just nonsense. One response was, so you want her to write another book then? Is that what you're saying? And, no, I just want her to recant or explain the fallacies that I exposed in my paper. Another was an attack on my gender, claiming that I was mansplaining to Stephanie Kelton. And at the time, I didn't even really know what that meant. So I kind of had an idea, because of the context in which it was presented, but I really didn't know what it meant. So I had to Google it. And then there were several people that did acknowledge that privately owned commercial banks do create most of the money in circulation, but they added a twist. They said, yeah, the state licenses banks, so they create money for the government. you know, it's analogous to attempting to fit it like an oversized square peg into a round hole. And that's the kind of stuff that I was, you know, up against. I think I responded with, well, taxi drivers are also licensed by the state. So do they drive for the government? And they responded, oh, that's silly. And I go, oh, but the original statement wasn't. Anyway, I realized that I was kind of wasting my time there, and I certainly wasn't enjoying myself. So I packed it in for a while. And I still waffle, you know, do I want to do this? You know, what do I get out of this? But I always end up coming back because I recognize the importance of this issue. And I do feel a little more energized now that some people are coming into PMC, and because I've made some contacts with other people like with AFJM. So we are kind of establishing a path forward. And I'm kind of, you know, sort of positive about that. Hopefully everyone's had time to watch all the videos in the Modern Money Forget Theory series. All of my arguments debunking MMT stab hypothesis are in those videos, in addition to PDF supplements that are attached to them. And I was hoping that we could go directly into the Q&A session, but the format doesn't allow that. So I have to keep talking for a little while. So what I like to do is actually to explain how the stocks and flows of money actually circulate regarding government financing. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to share the screen, and then I'll start to explain. Okay. Okay, I hope everybody can see the screen there. So yes. Starting on the top left-hand corner, there's 3 boxes. And what they do is they describe the two-way electronic communication cash flows, one-way, and two-way electronic communications. So then there are a couple of boxes in the flow chart, starting with the Government of Canada. This box represents all the laws and administrative aspects of the Government of Canada. The next is the people of Canada. And that includes everyone. So all government employees, the governor of the Bank of Canada, the Prime Minister, CEOs of banks, the public, everyone. The reason the boxes are configured this way is to more accurately show that all legal monetary transactions go through commercial banks. As you can see, it's centrally located. For example, let's say, you know, I receive a government check in the mail. Well, what is the first thing that I do? I take it to the nearest ATM and I deposit in my bank account. So, and the commercial bank recognizes that it's a check from the Government of Canada. So the bank goes through what's called a clearing and settlement process. The clearing part of the process verifies the parties involved in the transactions and makes sure there are funds to transfer. The settlement part of the process is the actual electronic transfer of funds. So now I have money in my account. So how did it get there? All federal government money goes through the Consolidated Revenue Fund here in Canada. That's this thing right here. And in the US, it goes through the Treasury, but they're structured almost exactly the same. So the Treasury, or the Receiver General, authorizes these payments through communications with the Government of Canada and commercial banks. So bingity bang bing, bing bing, back and forth it goes. Excuse me. So all G7 countries have an accounting and payment system like this. So where does the CRF get its funds? Taxation, revenue from government corporations, money owed to the government internationally, and the proceeds from securities issued by the federal government. So using this random day, which I picked was December 2nd, 2020, we can trace the various deposits that were entered into the government's cash account. Starting with the left, we have bonds issued by the federal government. Comes directly from the Bank of Canada. In the process, 4.9 billion digital dollars was created. This was brand new money, simply numbers typed into a database. The next is the interest on the Prudential Liquidity Fund, followed by interest gained by the Receiver General's account or the government's cash balance. That they are the same thing. That's this down here. And this brings up some interesting operational observations about how the Bank of Canada functions. The Bank of Canada differs from other financial institutions, not only because of its responsibilities as lender of last resort, but that the bank does not hold retained earnings. So any profits made by the Bank of Canada are remitted to the Receiver General's account. And you can see this little line here. There's a little notation up here. And this comes directly again. Any profits go directly into the government's cash account. And because the Bank of Canada does not hold any retained earnings, it doesn't have a pile of cash on hand to purchase anything. So as a result, new money is created whenever the Bank of Canada acquires securities from the federal government. In addition, most people have difficulty in wrapping their heads around the dual role that the Bank of Canada plays. One is that it acts as the fiscal agent for the federal government, or in other words, it acts as the government's bank. And two is that it's also a backstop to the commercial banking sector. So notice that all funding that comes out of the CRF goes right back into accounts held by commercial banks. So this is everything going into the government's cash balance. Everything going out goes right back to commercial bank accounts. Now, how do I know this? Data retrieved from the Government of Canada states the day of the transaction, the type of transaction, and what bank it is going to or from. What this data shows without any doubt is that money must be in the CRF before the federal government can spend. And in the US, it's the same thing. And you can actually get data similar to this by just going to their daily treasury statements. And again, that's publicly accessible. So that's it for this little segment. So if there's any questions about the flow chart or anything else, and then we can carry on from here. So I'm going to cancel the sharing if I can. Stop the sharing. Okay.
Thank you. Do we have any initial questions for Jeff before he continues? Feel free to raise your hand or type stack in the chat, either one. Carly's helping me monitor both, so hopefully we'll catch you if you have a question. If not, then Jeff, please feel free to continue.
Virginia's
I'm sorry, hold on. I got a couple.
And then we have a couple raised hands.
Okay.
I was just hoping you could, for those of us who've been extraordinarily busy and have not had time to watch all your videos, I'm wondering if you could just highlight the key points that you think are most important. Give us a summary.
Well, the most important thing that the greatest error that they make is that they completely ignore the fact that the majority of money created in circulation is created by privately owned commercial banks. So that is completely counter to their STAB hypothesis, which states that governments must spend first before taxing and borrowing can occur. So what they do is they conflate the currency issuer with all money creation. So that's their biggest flaw. It's the most obvious thing, and you should, once you see that, then you should, I don't know how you can take the theory seriously. And then of course, in the first video, I explain how they do it.
Let's go to John Howe, and then we'll go to Dan Sullivan.
Yeah, this idea, of course, that all of these transactions go through banks is no surprise to most of us. What I'm interested in is the reference you made to the source of the data that allowed you to actually track this. And so could you give me a clue as to how I might go chase that data myself? Where do I get it?
Yeah, all those links are in PDF supplements underneath the videos. So you can either access them on YouTube, or you can go directly to the Progressive Money Canada website, and you can just navigate along the header bar and just go to Debunking MMT, and just you scroll down and you'll see a direct links to the information. And actually in the United States, it's kind of easier to look at the data and see that there must be money in the treasury before it can be spent. Whereas in Canada, I had to individually download data and then sort of translate it. So it'd be, and those tables too, like I've outlaid a complete day, December 2nd, 2020. So you can download that supplement, and then you can verify it with the real data that you can download from the government of Canada. But I had to go through the inflows, the outflows, the cash balance. I had to do all those things separately. Whereas in the United States, their daily treasury statement, you can see all that stuff on one page.
Does that mean it's on the Treasury website?
Yeah, the daily treasury statement. You can see most of the data right there that you need to know.
Does that help, John?
Yeah, it does. Thanks.
Dan Sullivan.
Yeah, I was more critical of this than Jeff was, and I remember having interactions with him where he was, I think, giving them the benefit of the doubt as much as one could possibly do, and I had like, no, this is nonsense, you know, and I'm looking at this now and I'm saying, well, Jeff is showing how they're wrong in detail. And I always just said, no, it's a wrong concept, you know. So I never got into these details, but it's good to, you know, it's always good to have lots of data and to show that the details are wrong as well, because MMT's approach is to boggle the mind with details. And to say, no, that's not what happens. It happens this way, and it does this, and it does that. And they make it enormously complex in order to make it not work. And my thing was just, look, we all know that inflation is too much money chasing too few goods. So obviously the people who created the goods are the people who created the value of money. And we tax the people, we take money from the people who created the goods, but we let other people who aren't creating any goods lend us money that's rightfully our own money in the first place. And that's kind of the end of my analysis. And then I listen to you and I say, okay, he's going into great detail. And the combination is unbeatable. That if you start off with them being conceptually wrong, and then you show that all the details that they use to confuse the issue are also wrong, then there's not a rock for them to crawl under once that happens.
Well, I'm hoping that people will recognize that, and everybody will support the concept, which is something that I want to talk to a lot of you after all this is over, whatever else I have to say. But there has to be some kind of unified front in reality, because exactly as you say, Dan, this is what they do. And this applies to anybody. If nobody can explain to you a concept, and I don't care how complicated, if it's the speed of light, if they can't give you a general idea of how it works within a paragraph or less, like at least get you interested in saying, oh yeah, that kind of makes sense. Oh yeah, I have to look a little deeper here or there, which is completely opposite of MMT. They just basically, they take you on these wild goose chases. And there's another guy, I don't know if he's here or not, but Joe Bongiovanni.
Yeah, he's here in the group. Yeah.
Okay. Because he notices that this the same thing. And he's pretty outspoken about it, but that's what they do. It's purposeful. And
the only one thing I want to say is that what the government is doing right now is similar to what MMT recommends. And we're, in the United States, the jump from April to May, if you turn it into an annual percentage, it's a 12% inflation already. And my fear is that they are going to discredit legitimate monetary reform, that their monetary reform is being pushed, and it is going to be so bad that the real monetary reform is going to be discredited as well. So,
well, I actually give MMT credit for this too. Like, what they do is they just don't want to talk about this stuff, like the Stubbs hypothesis, but they get a lot of stuff right. Like, the only thing that limits the amount of money creation is inflation, exactly what you're talking about. And what's happening in Canada and the United States is mainly money creation by the central banks. And I think they're doing the right thing. We can worry about inflation a little bit further, down the road, because just like somebody else said, I think it was Dan, that, it's too much money chasing too few goods and too few services. But what else you can do? You don't have another option right now, really. So what the central banks are doing, I agree with, given our current monetary system. Yeah. But if we had the power, or like the Progressive Money Canada proposal, is that we would mandate like certain cash flows through like referendums from the people, so that you could spend directly into like our medical system. And that would save like, 25% on your federal taxes, just create that money debt free. And because it's a productive service, it wouldn't be inflationary the same way the money's used now, because the money now is mainly like for CERB benefits and that kind of thing. So it's not for a productive enterprise. And that's another thing, that money can be created, no problem at all, for a productive enterprise that benefits the majority of people. Whether it's infrastructure projects or medical, environmental, climate change, all those things.
I think the asset bubbles we're having are not caused by the central bank money. They're caused by the commercial banks. People getting that stimulus money are using it as down payments on real estate, and people are buying stocks and stuff where banks are financing it. So for every dollar of central bank money that we're creating, we wouldn't have much inflation because of that, if that was the only money being created. But the banks are saying, well, there's more money to pay us back with, so we can lend more.
That's true. I was just talking about the money creation by the Bank of Canada. There's also a lot of money creation by the Bank of Bank of Canada for the commercial banking sector. And that is, you're exactly right. That is part and parcel to the inflationary process.
Yeah, I'm done. I talked enough.
Did you, I think that's the end of the questions for this. Did you had a little bit more you wanted to discuss, Jeff? Present a little bit more?
No, unless there's more questions. Again, I was hoping everybody would have seen the first video because I'd be just rattling on. I'd be repeating myself, but I think it's important to understand how MMT gets away with this fallacy, this huge lie. And part of it is because the majority of the population, which includes politicians and even people in finance, don't realize where the majority of money comes from or how it's created. So that's a big reason why they get away with this. And they're able to say, well, all money comes from the government. And most people, they kind of think that's the way it works. And actually, if we had a progressive Money Canada money system, that would be the way it worked, because it would be the central bank would be creating all the money in existence. So people have this misconception of where money comes from. Everybody thinks it comes from the central bank and that commercial banks borrow from the Bank of Canada. So that's one of the reasons why they got away with it for such a long time. And then, of course, the deceptive practices. I don't even know if they're doing it on purpose. I don't even want to. I don't even want to go there. But what I've outlined in the initial paper that I wrote is just based on exactly what they said. The contradictions. Anybody that reads, you don't even have to have like a background in monetary reform. The only thing you have to kind of know is where money comes from is, commercially owned banks through the loans process. So I could go on for another 20 minutes and repeat the content of video 1 if you guys want, but.
Well, we have a question from Joe Polito, and then we'll kind of decide how we want to proceed. Go ahead, Joe.
Hi, good presentation, Jeff. And I don't want to play the devil's advocate about this, but I certainly agree that the Need Act approach is the ideal that we should go for. But when you think about someone like Michael Hudson, who is a supporter of Georgism, who is a supporter of the Chicago plan, and who is considered to be a top MMT person, I don't think they're doing anything on purpose. I think there's a lot of very sincere people, I know some of them, who are trying to figure it out and who want to do the best thing for the people. I mean, Kelton's book, she said the real deficits are in education and health and infrastructure and so forth. She uses some of the same examples. She talks about Greenspan saying that there's no reason that we'll never be short of money. We can always print enough money. And she refers to other people as well. So I agree that they have this odd way of conveying a lot of their thoughts and have some conclusions which are eccentric, but I don't think they're that far away from us. The big difference is that they're describing the way things are, and AFJM is looking for how they should be. And why they don't focus a little bit more on reform, I don't know. That to me is their Achilles heel. But I still believe that we should all be working together. I've got mauve on today. And I understand that's a unifying color, unites red and blue. And I still think we should be looking at doing some things together, first steps at least. Just I'm an optimist.
Yeah. For those of you that don't know, Joe and I have had kind of this conversation already a little bit, and I agree. But you have to start with reality first. And if you read from top to bottom, Debunking MMT, that section on Progressive Money Canada, I give MMT credit where, you know, credit is due. That's how I actually start this kind of blurb is, you know, you got to give them credit because they've got the public media spotlight. They can get on these radio talk shows and whatnot. But they almost never talk about things like stabs. So they'll talk about their prescriptive policies, which some I totally agree with, like the idea of a government-run work program, a locally run, federally funded program for those who want to work. Like, I think that's a great idea. But outside of that, I haven't seen any great ideas that they have. But I would love to work with MMT, but I would like them to recant this stab hypothesis because it's completely unnecessary. And I also make that point in the paper that I published earlier that you don't need to think of it in these terms. You don't need to think and confuse everybody, including yourself, to think that the government creates all money first. It could be, you know, if there was like a Progressive Money Canada monetary system, it could be that way, but that's not the way it works right now. So we got to start with a position of reality. And if they can't recant that, we can skirt around but I don't know how to, it's very difficult to do. And that's why I'm counting on you, Joe. You can build the bridge. So, and I'll be right there with you. If we can talk about other policies, and that's another problem that I see with MMT, is they think the system is good. It's fine just the way it is. So I haven't seen any proposals, although I've seen Stephanie Kelton weaken a little bit when asked the question, well, could the, you know, such and such a thing? And she says, well, it sounds like she might be open to some other ideas, but don't quote me on it because I can't remember exactly. So, yeah.
We got a question from Virginia and then from Joe Bongiovanni. Go ahead, Virginia.
So if you think about addressing any kind of communication difficulty, challenge, problem, issue, I've always found it useful to think in terms of getting the facts and then recognizing that the story someone is telling from the facts they have. And then when you understand the story, then you can understand the emotions that story triggers and what action is going to be taken. And someone commented, and I think it's true, the MMT people are looking at the same facts that we're looking at, but they're telling a very different story about those. And some of it involves redefining terms and taking a different perspective. And when they do that, they have created a narrative and a story that makes sense if you accept their definition of terms and the assumptions they make. And clearly the emotion that their story is triggering is, oh, goody, you know, we can go ahead and spend more money. And my sense is someone else commented that, you know, we've got a hedge fund manager that started MMT. So of course, their worldview sees value in the existing system. You know, they stuffed their pockets, or some of them did. And if you genuinely believe that the system today is a good system, however, you believe that austerity measures are a really bad idea, that it is those austerity measures that are crippling and compromising our nation, then if those are your two key beliefs, they have taken the facts and established a narrative and story that makes it possible to maintain the current system and do away with the austerity and start spending money on so many of the things that we need to be spending money on. And I think that's where we do have agreement with them. I also read the book on the jobs guarantee, and it's well written. It makes a really good case for why that's a good idea. If you want to also adopt the idea that people have to have a job to feel like they're worthy, that's my disagreement with that. But I'm kind of there in Joe Polito's camp, the idea that how do we build bridges to these people? And I think the way we do it is to acknowledge what they're saying, acknowledge their story, and acknowledge the sense that it makes when you accept their definition of terms, which we don't. I mean, that is where our key differences are in the definition of terms and the story.
Jeff, do you want to respond?
Sure. Yeah, no, I agree with Virginia and I agree with Joe. And if anybody reads anything that I've written, I agree with her. I don't have any issue with their prescriptive policies. Those are all discussions that can take place, like the job guarantee program and that sort of thing. Because there's pros and cons of that. It's mainly, again, how it's organized. That's the critical thing. So those are all conversations that could take place. And I make the point that, yeah, some of the policies and MMT's ideas I agree with. The only thing I disagree with are very specific things, like the Stabs hypothesis, their descriptive analysis of how the actual system works. So if we are speaking publicly and we don't actually know how the system works, then who are we to say that we have a better idea for an improved system?
Okay. I'm gonna take a couple more questions and then we're gonna start going into breakout rooms. Let's go with Joe Bongiovanni, and then we have Ed. I want to say your name correct. Tuhig. I know I'm not pronouncing it right. And then Dan, I'm gonna save yours for the breakout rooms because I'm sure you can start a good discussion in the breakout rooms with whatever your comment is. So go ahead, Joe, and then we'll go to Ed.
Okay, so, without having enough history with MMT, it's really easy to be taken by their words of the day and their seeming, supporters of the benevolent agenda that we're all trying to achieve. But if you know how MMT got started, that is to say, from Mosler economics, it was Warren Mosler adopting the post-Keynesian economists' chat rooms, the post-Keynesian economists of whom have been advocating for exactly these same policies for generations. Okay, so that's who they were, and the same post-Keynesians who never really knew very much about money. And Warren Mosler took them over with their largesse in terms of social policy. And that's why when you see all these great things that they want to do, they're the old school post-Keynesian ideas, and they never let them go. And now they're trying to ride that history into championing the position of the status quo with regard to money creation in the country and in the world. And that's a big failure, okay? That's a big failure, because there's nothing to MMT except the Warren Mosler stuff. The post-Keynesian stuff is beautiful and wonderful and always has been. And quite frankly, I'm going to say this out loud because I know some post-Keynesians will listen to this. They have kind of really rejected what post-Keynesianism is about because they're denying the need to change the institutions in order to achieve the great goals and objectives that we all want for all of our work. So, my intervention, if you will, it was with modern monetary theory, which happened in 2009 and 10. And I started making videos about them back then. And interestingly, my first videos about them were actually about their good stuff. Well, here, these guys doing this and they wanted to use monetary system. But then when I come to realize that, no, that's all hogwash. They're all just about being able to say that the central banking system of debt-based money is okay, and we can make it work, and we can't. That's my word about MMT.
Yeah, that's, can I respond, Mark?
Yeah, sure, go ahead.
Yeah, no, it's, yeah, Warren Mosler, I don't know if anybody here has read it, but I'm sure Joe has, Soft Currency Economics 2. He also tells the same story about his kids, although it's not near as elaborate as Stephanie Kelton's book, The Deficit Myth. And in The Deficit Myth, I mean, I like that book. On Amazon.ca, I gave it 3 stars. Of course, I had a big long comment, but it's about the first 40 pages. You can just tear them right out of the book, just toss them. And the rest of it is actually good stuff. I remember another part of the book too, where she describes which is circumstantial evidence to, like government tightening the budget. It's always bad for people. And you don't really have to do a lot of research to understand why that is so. But she actually goes back, and in the book, she lists all the different times when the government tightened its budget. And almost immediately after that, there was a recession. So that's some of her best evidence, is actually the circumstantial, which again is not related at all to the Stabs hypothesis. So I'm asking MMT if they can, I don't know, just give up on it, and we can go on together. And then we can argue about, should we have a new system or not? But
okay, thanks. Ed. I think you're still on.
Can you unmute?
Okay, I think I'm on mute. I think we're all quite like Bobby Kennedy. Bobby Kennedy said that some people see things as they are and ask why. I think we are like him when he said that I think of things as they could be and say, why not? Well, what I am always talking about is what it can be. And I see the creation of money as being the sole power of government. It has been said by our first Prime Minister who set up the Bank of Canada that if we lose control of credit and money, then the Parliament is of no use whatsoever. And if money is created by government and spent by government, it is presumably spent for the benefit of all people, all citizens. The government spends the money. But if the money is created by government for the private sector, it is theoretically created equally for every citizen. But how it works is that some citizens get to use more money and have more value from that money than the others. The money should be created by government and loaned to the private sector at a fair value for the money use, in which case every Canadian would then benefit from every dollar created equally, either that spent by government or that spent put into the private sector for the benefit of individuals unequally, but paying a fair value for all people who don't have equal use of the money. Anyway, that's a basic theory of mine, which Jeff probably already knows very well. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. So, Stephen, I know you have a comment, but I'm going to ask you to hold it for the breakout rooms.
It won't be part of it. I won't be here.
Okay, go ahead. I'll let you go ahead. After Stephen, though, we're going to go ahead and go to the breakout rooms.
Okay, sorry. I need to get to some other things. I just wanted to give a few comments. Joe may know some of this, but in the early years of AMI got along, or Steve Zerlinga got along with Michael Hudson, and that was about it. He got along with Michael Hudson. And then Randall Ray started writing, and he had me review Understanding Money from from 98, and it didn't make a lot of sense. And then he wrote Modern Monetary Theory in 2012. But prior to that, he asked me to do some research. And I'm not going to go into that. You all know that part well, but I'll give you some of the anecdotes that I came along, because at that time we had a good relationship with Michael Hudson. And so I want to give you a little bit from my perspective of what his thinking is versus the thinking of Randall Ray and why things get crazy with MMT. And then I want to end with a recent observation. Michael Hudson models the economy with debit credit. You know, either it's a debit or it's a credit. And I got into his thinking, and believe it or not, and as Jeff and others have said, there's a lot of good descriptive economics in MMT. Notice it's not reform, it's descriptive. It's just explaining the way it is. And in Hudson's model, the description is it's credit debit. If you have a debit, there must be a credit. If you have a credit, there must be a debit. I would bring up the idea of the greenbacks in the Civil War, and to distinguish greenbacks from different types of money. There was always a problem I had with MMT. They couldn't give me a good reason. There must be in their minds then two types of debit, because the greenbacks were not a debit money, a debt-based money after April 1862. So, okay, be that as it's made, that gets into the conversation. The part I want to give to you is this debit credit thinking is, I found it in research in Goldman Sachs. They use Michael Hudson's thinking of this credit debit with a lot of depth, and they look at countries, they look at investments around the world. And so they're looking at central banks and, you know, like take Greece or any of these countries, and they'll look at where the private debt is, the public debt, the commercial debt, and they'll work out where the balances are. And Hudson's very good at that. The difficulties are he doesn't have a full picture. So to explain the full picture, he turns to Randall Ray and says, explain our thinking on the details. And Randall Ray actually cleaned up a lot of his thinking from understanding money in 98 to 2012. I found less things, but still in the basic notion of his thinking Randall Ray's thinking in 2012 was all money had to be debt. It couldn't be positive, and it had to be debt. And he comes back to this at the beginning, middle, and end of his book on MMT, by the book of the same title. And I still had my greenbacks problems. What are the greenbacks, for example? And I would maybe bring up some other things. And I think Michael Hudson, without thinking, he blindly accepts Randall Ray's thinking. He doesn't really question it seriously. For a good while, a good friend of theirs, Steve King, would point out the error and says, I like a lot of their thinking, like we like a lot of their thinking in terms of descriptive economics, but he never got upset about it. Zarlanga said they never got upset because they were getting paychecks somewhere and they couldn't afford to get upset. But that's another point. So Randall Ray asked for a lot of help with his thinking. He put out chapters for MMT, the book in 2012. He really put out chapter, get it out into the public, asked for feedback, but he never was getting feedback where he would change his mind on things. I was part of some of those chapter readings in his groups, and it was part of my research that for Zarlanga. And as some of you know, I wrote a paper with him in 2012. But I just want to give you some of my thinking on this from my experience. So, and it's when if you talk to Michael Hudson for some depth, he comes very close to thinking about the Need Act. And, it's a guy named David Kelly and Dennis Kucinich and that friendship where they can come close again, but he veers off. And Kucinich, Zarlenga would say it's his paycheck. And so I'll leave it there. I think, but more recently hearing to Hudson and how he's very supportive of Stephanie Kelton and, Blink, I'm forgetting the woman's name, a lovely person who writes about full employment. He blindly backs them, but he doesn't give the thinking behind it. And his model, from how I understand it, through himself and from Goldman Sachs, it's descriptive economics that doesn't talk about money creation because he cannot make it compatible, or Randall Ray will not do that for him. That's my 2 cents. Thank you for listening.
Okay. Thanks, Steve. So now we're gonna try something a little bit different, and we are going to go into some breakout rooms, which Bo Young will share a little bit about, but a couple of things to think about. I hope with the breakout rooms is that we'll give everybody a little better opportunity to speak up and share their opinions. We also always have some strong voices who are very immersed in monetary reform and every issue. And so we want to give some other people some chance to speak. Things to talk about. Should we be interacting with MMT? Is there a softer approach that I think Virginia and Joe and other people, I think, are advocating for? Is that something that we should consider? Is there a different way to look at MMT instead of talking about this is wrong? Is there a way to talk about what MMT as a theory doesn't do, and not necessarily speak directly to them, but speak to their supporters? I think there are different ways to tackle this monster that we may all have different views on. So with that, I also, before we go into breakout rooms, I don't want to announce, but I'm gonna let Govert announce right quickly. He will be leaving us soon, and we appreciate Govert for all the work he's done for the Lions for Just Money over the past, actually longer than he's been the managing director, but over the past couple of years where he's really done a lot with bibliographies and getting our newsletter off the ground, and he's moving on to, I guess, greener pastures, you could say. So Hobart, did you want to announce who would be taking your position?
Yes, I will keep it short because, we will get to know the new team soon. So yeah, my contract expired actually the end of May. I got 2 weeks extra to it, and I'll add some other weeks till everything is well taken care of. So the board just recently decided to hire both the people that wanted the job. So Tabitha Enriquez is the one that applied, and we found out that she already had a really nice background in monetary reform and has the spirit and the understanding and to help us, possibly very substantially so. And we hired also Carly, who is more known to us because of her already big activity, especially now as heading the project for the Just Money Festival. But these two ladies will proceed with managing, piloting AFJM, and I'm very excited about it. I feel very honored that you needed, guys, 2 people to get into my shoes.
That's one way to look at it.
As far as the Coffeehouse is concerned, Boyoung is back in full charge. So any ideas and suggestions, let's say, go to Boyoung or to Mark Young. And I just want to make it open, unless Joe Polito says, God, no, this is too much, that Joe will do the study stack. We got some still in the make that we will share soon. But Joe will in his own style. He might do it slightly different than I do. But I'll leave it at this. I'm still involved. I'm still enjoying all this. But yeah, this is the first outing of our 2 new ladies Carly Anger and Tepita Enriquez. I will see them a lot for all kinds of training, but I wish you here officially good luck with this great crowd of people.
As do all of us. Thanks, Colbert. And congratulations to Tabitha and Carly. We look forward to your work and moving the Alliance along in its mission. Bo, do you want to go over the breakout rooms and send everybody out to them?
Sure. So just before I do that, there's going to be groups of 5 or 6. I just wanted to briefly go over some ground rules. And so we're going to be in the group for about 20-25 minutes. Some people may not know everyone, and so we suggest to do a short introductory go around. So say your name, where you are, your location, and maybe a short comment or question about MMT or about just money in light of the discussion that we had for this last hour. So ground rules for the discussions, pretty basic. So respect each other at all times. It's okay if we don't always agree. Use good communication skills. Think about the power of listening. No interruptions, no judgments. Share airtime. Let's try and be inclusive. Share information and things you learned, of course, but if there's any personal details or personal stories, let's not share that without people's permission. And please ask questions. Everybody's on a different part of the learning curve, so there is no such thing as a stupid question. We really hope that these small groups are a chance to allow for higher engagement. And yes, if you may be asked to leave the meeting if these rules are not respected, but I really don't think that will happen. So without further ado, if you look on the bottom part of your Zoom screen, or actually, no, let me open up the rooms first. A window will open up for you to join. And I'll give people a 3-minute warning before they come back. So have fun.
Are the rooms labeled by, is there a particular topic for each room or?
No. Judith, do you want to join the room?
Got us off. We're having a great time.
Where's our host? Did she come? Oh, there she is, Bo Young.
Yeah, there she is.
Where's Mark? Oh, there he is.
How did you organize those groups, Bo-Young?
Mostly random, and then I made sure that there were some a mix of newer people and newer people.
Cool. Well, welcome back, everyone. I hope the breakout rooms helped you guys engage in a more personal way so that we can hear other voices and other people's opinions. And so now I think what we want to do is capture some of those and see if there are additional questions for Jeff or different discussion points that we could bring up. If you like, you can, select one person out of your breakout room to maybe ask Jeff a question, or maybe kind of discuss what you guys what your conversation centered around, and see if Jeff have a response to any of those particular questions. So with that, I will open up the chat. So raise your hand or stack or whatever. So we got first on the gate is Joel Polito. Go ahead, Joe.
Yeah. And I would like to ask a resident guru, Joe Bongiovanni, what he can tell us about Wright Patman. My impression is that he was 100% a Chicago Plan devotee, that he was there right at the beginning, and that he really understood the process, and he really pressured the Federal Reserve and other congressmen to move in that direction, the government to move in that direction. Is that correct, Joe?
You're on mute, Joe.
You're on mute.
Get it?
Joe, you have to click your unmute button.
You got it.
Oh, okay.
It came to me.
There.
The gentleman from Wright Patman. In the East, it's a gem of a political economic, activist who occupied that chair of the banking committee for quite a long time, and very fortunate with my dad. Okay, my dad, when he used to go to Washington, he always went in and visited with Congressman Patman, and he said, nobody else down there really gets it like Patman does. Now, there were a couple of other activists, down there too, but Patman got the whole thing. He saw the whole theater of what the monetary system is for what it was. And yes, he advocated all of the reforms for the Chicago Plan and others that came along, during the meantime. But yeah, I would say Wright Patman was as close as you could get to having your man in the Congress. Over.
Yeah, the reason I asked is because of that paper I distributed. I can put it in the link in the chat, but in 1943, in World War II, he's proposing that the Federal Reserve buy all the bonds from the government at interest-free to finance the war. And of course, he lost that argument, but it just seems to me that such a savvy guy knew what the single best step to initiate the process was. And as I said to my group, I talked to a guy who's a devotee of MMT, a really knowledgeable guy, and he said he thought that would be something that MMT could really go for. So I just wondered what you thought of that particular measure, Joe, that Reitman or Patman,
yeah,
that he advocated as a first step. And, during the war was the best time, obviously, to make such a big step.
Yeah. If people want to say, well, it'll be an interim step. How can you be sure it'll be an interim step? how far behind does the second step come? These are the kind of things that my dad was always drilling into me, you know? Be real careful, because when the opportunity comes, there's going to be a whole lot of false opportunities that are going to come along. And they're going to be your best friends. And they're going to be doing it all for the right reasons. But if you don't stick to getting monetary reform done in the first place and fight to hang on to it, then we'll just never get it. So that's kind of where I'm at. I would just say that we're $27 trillion in debt, and you know, let's just say we'd be the same amount if Wright Patman had only gotten his way. You know, so well, we still have to pay back $27 trillion out of the future of our economy. To who? For what? For the power of over the money that we already own. You know, that we still have to. We're going to rent it without charge, but we're going to have to borrow it. So to me, I'll be honest. Almost any interim step that comes my way, I would see it as an obstruction or something that's just getting in the way. And I feel that way about all of them that are coming right now, and we're getting the largest plethora of alternative money things that's ever come down the pike. Over.
Thanks, Joe. Other comments from people who, some insights? Go ahead, Jerome.
Thank you. Yes, a question for Jeff. In reading some of the PDF transcripts of your video presentations, I thought that you kind of conceded the argument on currency in the US, that currency is in fact created by the federal government. If currency is created by the federal government, then reserve balances, which are the electronic equivalent of currency and entirely interchangeable, must also be created by the government. This is an MMT argument. Your emphasis, as I understood it, was on the creation of money by commercial banks, but it almost conceded the idea in the US that the federal government creates the paper currency and therefore the reserve balances. Now the fact that they print it and manufacture it, as Dr. Stephanie Kelton mentions, the sole manufacturer of dollars, but they are IOUs of an institution that acknowledges that it is not part of the US government. So yeah, we print it, but then we have to go hat in hand to obtain it via taxation or via bond sales. So I'm wondering if you developed a position on currency, or perhaps are seeing it as well as another avenue that is actually that is actually the IOU of the U.S. government's creditors.
Yeah, no, I make it quite clear. This is what MMT does: is they conflate the currency issue with all money creation. And this is another misunderstanding people have about what reserves are. So reserves are created whenever a bank, for example, issues a loan. Those are bank reserves that are created by the bank. And so the currency or paper money is quite separate from bank reserves. And when they actually do their transactions at end of day trading, they don't do it with paper money. They do it with digital currency, that whatever is available. So the money actually doesn't move anywhere. And they also, in overnight trading, when they realize that there's a bank that's short in the system somewhere, he must borrow money from either other banks. And in Canada, what they call it settlement balances. But those are, in Canada, Bank of Canada actually says, yeah, we call those, some people call them reserves. So it's a very loose definition that the MMT uses to try to sell the stabs hypothesis. And that's one of the major mistakes, as I explained, like in the beginning of the videos, they conflate the currency issuer with all money creation. Because I think most people here realize that the majority of money that's created in circulation is by privately owned commercial banks through the loans process. And that's what creates those settlement balances. Like in Canada, it's like we have about less than 2.4% of all the money in circulation is actually paper money and coins. The rest of it is digital. And at the end of every single day, they go through a balancing process where they move reserves back and forth. And at the end in the Bank of Canada, because they've all agreed that our balance sheets must all balance at the end of the working day before we start the next day. So it's just a set of rules that they worked under. And if at the end of the day, banks have not actually haven't been able to, they've gone through all the loans process, there's still going to be irregularities because also the government's cash balance indirectly affects all these other reserve systems. And the central bank, and I'm sure the Federal Reserve, I can't say that for sure, but everything else is identical. So why shouldn't this be? The Bank of Canada goes through a process where it just automatically balances any little wee irregularities at the end of the day. So yeah, reserves are quite different than just currency.
Oh, did you say that settlement balances are a consequence of commercial banks creating money through loans? I thought that's
can be, yeah. That's the Bank of Canada's terminology for it. But the Bank of Canada also stipulates that some people call those reserves. But I like to use the terminology that the monetary authority uses in Canada.
I just quickly wanted to say the money that circulates in the public does not include the money that circulates within the banks as their reserves. So that when we talk about inflationary effects and stuff, that's money that circulates in the public, and that's what is almost entirely created by commercial banks.
Right. So there's also a very interesting process that happens, if I could continue, is in Canada, we have what's called the automated clearing and settlement system. So there's all of the small transactions, and there's millions of them that happen every single day. So there's actually no exchange of reserves between banks during this process, like the daily process. It only happens at the very end of the day when one bank is short and another bank is long, because they have to stick to the rules of the game. And then if a bank is in a short positions and it can't borrow from other banks, then the Bank of Canada is there.
Thanks. I think we had Joe Bongiovanni on the stack. Go ahead, Joe.
Well, you know, the statement that MMT makes with regard to their two things, one of them is currency. They say the government is the monopoly issuer of the currency, which of course they're not, okay? And then the other thing that they say is the government is the only one that can create a dollar, or create dollars. It creates all the dollars, okay? And they use that to try to convince you that the government's creating money. So which is it? Do they create dollars or do they create money? What's a dollar? A dollar is the unit of account of the money system. It's in the monetary statutes. The dollar is the definition of the unit of account. So since most of the money that is created in this country is created by the commercial banks, it is not possible that the United States government is the one that creates the dollars, because those are all dollars. When they make a loan and they put it into your bank account, those are denominated in dollars. So it's just what I call shoehorning reality. They try to keep shoehorning reality into meaningless memes and then sell that as something that is actually really, really special, which is MMT's knowledge.
Well, actually, Joe, and again, that's exactly what I say. I try to put things in the simplest terms possible, and that's what MMT does. This is for Jerome, actually. So it conflates the currency issuer with all money creation, and that's their trick. So it's, I can say it in one sentence, and that's what they do. And that's how they have to create all of these different stories in order to support the stab hypothesis. And unfortunately, the stab hypothesis is the cornerstone of all MMT descriptive analysis. So it leads to other fallacies like taxes don't pay for anything. So if you look, and I've marked up Stephanie Kelton's paper on do taxes and bonds finance government spending. I mean, when you read the paper, she gets all kinds of concepts wrong. And she also creates a new fallacy called reserve effects. And then she discounts the time difference between when banks actually have to have their balance sheets balanced, which is actually at the end of every day. It doesn't matter what happens during the day. It's at the end of the day that they balance their sheets. And plus, they don't even have to do it then. They have a 2-week period in which they can, balance their sheets. And Stephanie Kelton is aware of that. It's actually in her working paper. She acknowledges not only that, but so does Warren Mosler. But they just simply ignore it.
Okay. Well, good discussion. Are there any, we have about 10 minutes left. I don't see anyone's hands up, and I don't see anyone in the chat. Oh, I'm sorry, Mike Holden. I'm sorry. I didn't see you. I see you, Mike. Where you at, Mike?
Hey, can you hear me?
Yep.
So a corollary to the monetary creation fallacy that MMT suffers from is the ideology that they ascribe as being sovereign money. They will freely admit that they ascribe to the sovereign money concept. And as Joe Bongiovanni was saying, of course, they claim that the government is the issuer of all the currency. And I like this shoehorning reality concept because they do shoehorn reality and then they build fallacy upon fallacy. So when you bring to their attention and you say, well, if private banks are creating the vast majority of the money supply, then by definition, you don't have a sovereign money system, right? And so they just don't understand the very simple definition of words. And this is a big problem. And then, so I've noticed recently they shifted the talk away from claiming that they ascribe to a sovereign money system or that we have a sovereign money system. I think that's a more accurate way of putting it is MMT will claim that we live in a sovereign money system, but that's clearly not the case. So now they're saying that that a government cannot go broke in the currency that they issue, right? And that, again, is clearly false because it's been shown that in Weimar Germany, Zimbabwe, and other nations, Venezuela, that hyperinflation is a real thing and it has existed in the past. So they do shoehorn reality. They do not acknowledge the simple definition of words, and then they'll just build fallacy upon fallacy. And then when you call them on it, this is the thing that I think people here probably resonate a little bit with. Is either they will ignore it or they will say, you're a troll and you don't know enough about MMT to make these claims. And I think that's the really unfortunate aspect of it is MMT is very aggressive in when they try to issue a rebuttal, but it isn't substantive in any way. It's just this sort of harsh polemic that they think is somehow an authoritative argument. But the reality is, at least my perception is they're bullies. They are literal bullies, and they will not accept any criticisms of their shoddy scholarship. And if you go back to Mosler, I mean, Mosler is a perfect example of shoddy scholarship. I mean, it's just, there's no citations and it's bogus. Most of it's just bogus. But anyways, maybe Jeff, if you could, I appreciate your work on all of this. And I did, I posted a link that an MMT person forwarded to me from the Bank of Canada that does claim that the Bank of Canada creates money for government spending, but it is not detailed in any way. And I think your breakdown was much more, comprehensive and detailed. But if you could comment perhaps on this notion of of a sovereign money system that, you know, MMT claims that they describe the system and it's a sovereign money system, but clearly it is not. Do you have a take on that?
Actually, I'm not clear on, because MMT, there's volumes of stuff that's been written. And again, to your point, they're always twisting. They have to change their story all the time, little bits here and there to make it fit their narrative. So as far as I know, they don't, you know, I'm not sure what their stance is actually on a sovereign money system, whereas Progressive Money Canada, we're very clear on what we propose, which would be, you know, allow the Bank of Canada to create all the money in existence, and then commercial banks would have to borrow from the Bank of Canada, and then we could control the flow of money through a referendum process where you would, you know, decide, people would actually vote on, you know, where money should flow. But that's too far out anyway, that for this particular discussion.
I think that definitions are so important in how you define stuff. And that goes back to your original comment about currency and sovereign money and what is money and everything else. I know we have Howard, go ahead and say your question, and that's going to be the last question. And Jeff, I'm going to let you say some final words.
Okay.
Go ahead, Howard.
All right, thank you. Jeff, I think we're fellow MMT challengers there. So I have a question on your assessment for the future. In our little group, we talked a little bit about tactics or strategies in connection with MMT. There are three things that can be done. They're not mutually exclusive, but one might be better than another. There are suggestions that we should try to develop our relationship with them based on few, you know, things that we might have in common, few understandings at the theoretical level, and few aims, let's say, at policy level. The other thing would be fantastic, outright refutation at an academic level of their thinking, you know, at the highest level of philosophy of science and procedure. The last tactic is just kind of leave the big MMTers alone. They might not budge, but go after their following, you know, lure them away by saying like, hey guys, we got a better plan. It works out better. We have it modeled. We got really superior backing for it than actually MMT does. And, you know, join us. So those three little strategies, not mutually exclusive, but what do you think there?
Well, I agree with the concept, and Joe Polito, he's kind of working on that. So I'm hoping that we can somehow build some kind of bridge. So Joe is sort of spearheading that effort. I still have a few other things that I have to work on. I just want to respond to Mike Holden too, with regard to his question about MMT strategies when they speak. They often do this too, is because they cannot answer you within a paragraph or less, they'll suggest reading. So, and there's volumes of stuff to read. And of course, every time you read, it's like a wild goose chase. You usually
just say read MMT. That's all they do.
Exactly.
They don't even give a citation.
Yeah, right. Sometimes they do give a citation though, but they send you on a wild goose chase. So, and back to Govert's point. So I do have a suggestion, and unfortunately it means that I'll have to spend more time online. So I'm hoping that maybe I can provide a link or something. Bo Young can maybe provide a link that we can actually meet to people who want to make an online presence to challenge just the stabs hypothesis. And again, being aggressive, I'm just stating a point. I'm just asking for some answers to some straightforward questions. And I'm considering going back on Facebook and maybe Twitter. And I'm honestly not very excited about it. But if I have support from some of the people here, and I don't need much, because we have something I'm kind of excited about is Progressive Money Canada Associates, which is a group for Canada. Almost all the members are AFJM members, by the way. But at least it's a start. And what I would propose is that I would actually become active and I would start joining all these MMT groups and I would just pose questions. And then what I would do is, so that you're not wasting time, because I'm sure many people here don't like to be online that often, but I could shortcut it. So I would basically do the work in the argument, but I would forward the link to anybody who wants to participate. So it seems kind of childish in a way, but the more likes, it's actually like a currency in the internet. Like if you can get likes and get people to comment, so it has more of an online presence. And then I'm also working on like a local group too. But that to me would be time efficient. And I'm promising that I would do it, but I won't do it without support of people. I'm not going to just go out there by myself and challenge these issues. So every time I post, if anybody here want to be part of that group, then I would just send you a link and you don't even have to read it. If you trust what I'm saying, then you can just click, I like that, or whatever. But so that there's some kind of momentum in opposition, because MMT is basically a religion, because people can't explain how it works, the stab hypothesis in particular. So this is what I'm proposing to everybody here.
Okay. Well, thanks, Jeff, for a rousing discussion, for initiating a rousing discussion on MMT. We appreciate your time and your efforts. Have one more announcement from our co-managing director, Carly. And I'm sure, Jeff, if you send this out to this group, you'll get some people who will help in your social media campaign. There's an active chat discussion going on, and trust me, some people really want to get in there and help you out. So, Carly, could you go ahead before we close out, please?
Yes, thank you everyone for coming out tonight. Thank you, Jeff. I thought the breakout rooms went really great. So yeah, this is a really wonderful evening. And I am here to reintroduce the Just Money Festival. You may have seen somewhat of an invite go out last week. And I just wanted to bring it up while I have everyone's attention. So the Just Money Festival is happening the weekend of July 23rd, and it'll be Friday the 23rd through Saturday the 24th. We have Katerina Serafimova from she's a sovereign money reformer as our keynote, and then we will be doing we will be learning about story. And yeah, it should be a pretty great event where we can all kind of get together and hopefully feel inspired to continue this work in monetary reform. And I hope that you all will come. More information and registration will be coming out in the next couple of weeks, so be on the lookout. And that's all I have.
All right, thanks, Carly. Thanks to all you who attended. I hope you enjoyed yourselves on this, what is it, a Monday evening, I think. And look for other emails. Like I said, if you're not a member or subscribe to our newsletter, please visit our website and subscribe to the newsletter. If you have $25 a year, please join annually. We do love donations because we are trying to do a lot of things. And also I had mentioned in the breakout session that any of those that are interested in the International Monetary Reform Movement, the core group is sponsoring several different working groups on various topics. It's been sent out. I will try to make sure that it's included in our next newsletter, but they're meeting on various subjects that we really want to grasp the international consequences of what we do and discuss those and not such a setting of where we're just talking about the US or in this session here, Canada and the US, but really get a hold of the international issues that affect monetary reform globally. So with that,
last thing, Mark. Next Coffeehouse, what do we know?
Oh, I'll let Bo Young handle that. I'm not certain.
Next one is going to be in August the 8th. We've got Ronnie Phillips lined up, and more information will follow.
Okay, thanks, Bo.
I thought that was in June. Has that been changed? Wasn't that in June 24th or something?
Yeah, with the Just Money Festival, we didn't want to overload people, so we want to do something once a month.
Good.
Okay.
Great.
All right. Thanks, guys. Everybody have a good evening and a good
Thank you.
All right. Thank you,
Well
guys.
done. Well
Great
done,
session.
everybody.